teaching yourself anything, and I mean genuinely mastering something without a classroom or a professor telling you what matters or without a structured curriculum holding your hand through it, is a skill. And like every skill, there's a way to learn it, even if right now your idea of self-education is watching YouTube videos and hoping you will learn something. You probably know someone who seems to know a lot, not in a showing off way, but in a way where they can talk about almost anything with depth, connect ideas from completely different fields, see things other people miss. And when you're around them, you think, how? How did they get like that? Because they didn't go to a better school than you. They didn't have more hours in the day. Do something about how they learn is just fundamentally different. That difference is real, and it's not intelligence. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly how genuinely self-educated people think and learn. The actual approach, not the generic read more books advice. So that by the end of this, you will have a completely different relationship with how you acquire knowledge and what you actually do with it. But before we get to that, I want to explain what most people get wrong when it comes to educating themselves. Most people's approach to self-education looks like this. They consume, they watch, they read, they listen, they finish a book and move to the next one. They watch a documentary and feel informed. They follow smart people on the internet and absorb fragments of ideas across dozens of different topics. And at the end of all that consumption, if you sat them down and asked them to explain what they actually learned, to connect it to something, to use it, most of it is gone. And it's not because they're not intelligent, but because consumption and education are not the same thing. And treating them as if they are is the most common and most expensive mistake in self-learning. Richard Feynman understood this better than almost anyone. Feynman was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, but what made him genuinely exceptional wasn't his raw intelligence. It was the standard he held himself to when it came to understanding something. His rule was simple. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it yet. Not, you haven't read enough about it yet. You don't understand it. The explanation is the proof of the understanding, not a summary of it. He developed what is now known as the Feynman technique, a simple method for truly understanding something. The process works like this. First, choose a concept you want to learn, then try to explain it in your own words as if you're teaching it to someone who knows absolutely nothing about the topic. As you do this, you'll quickly notice where your understanding falls apart. You'll find the parts you can't explain clearly, or where you're relying on complicated terms without really knowing what they mean. When that happens, go back to the source material and study those weak areas. Then try explaining the concept again, using even simpler language. Repeat this process until you can explain the idea clearly and simply, because if you can't explain it in simple terms, chances are you don't fully understand it yet. The process sounds slow. It is slower than just reading. It is also the difference between information that stays with you for years and information that disappears the week after you consumed it. But the deeper thing Feynman was doing, and this is the part that rarely gets discussed, was treating knowledge as something to be built, not collected. Most people approach learning like they're filling a container. More input, more knowledge, fuller container. Feynman approached it like construction. Every concept had to connect to something else, had to be load-bearing, had to actually hold weight in the structure of his understanding. A fact that floated on its own, disconnected from everything else, was almost useless to him. This is what separates the person who has read 50 books and retained almost nothing from the person who has read 20 books and can talk about them with genuine depth 2 years later. The second person was building. The first person was just collecting knowledge. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway, and one of the most genuinely self-educated people of the last century, called this mental models. His argument was that the truly educated person doesn't just know things within individual disciplines. They have a lattice work of frameworks drawn from multiple fields: psychology, physics, biology, history, economics, and they use that lattice work to understand new situations, make better decisions, and see patterns that specialists in any single field would miss. Munger read voraciously for his entire life, but he wasn't reading to consume. He was reading to add to the lattice work. Every book was a potential new framework, a new lens, a new way of seeing something he'd already encountered from a different angle. The goal was never to finish the book. The goal was to walk away with something that changed how he thought about at least one thing. There's a story about Benjamin Franklin that I think is the most honest illustration of what real self-education looks like in practice. Franklin had almost no formal schooling. He left school at 10 years old to work in his father's candle shop. By the time he was in his 20s, he was already one of the most well-read and intellectually formidable people in the American colonies. He didn't get there by reading more than everyone else, though he did read a lot. He got there through a specific habit he developed as a teenager. When he came across an essay or idea he found interesting, he would put it aside and try to rewrite the main argument in his own words from memory. After that, he would compare his version with the original, but he wasn't checking how much he remembered. He was looking for where his thinking was weaker. Did the original argument make more sense? Was the logic stronger? Were the ideas explained more clearly? Whenever he found a gap, he worked on improving it. In a way, he treated every great piece of writing like a teacher. He wasn't trying to store information in his head. He was using it to sharpen his own thinking. That's what made the difference. He didn't read to consume information. He read to challenge himself, improve his reasoning, and become a better thinker. He later said this practice did more for his writing, his thinking, and his ability to construct an argument than anything else in his life. And he was talking about it at a time when he was already one of the most effective communicators and thinkers of his era. The method works because it forces active engagement with the material. Your brain cannot fake its way through reconstruction the way it can fake its way through reading. When you read, you can feel like you're following along while actually retaining almost nothing. When you try to reconstruct, to explain, to rewrite, to teach, the gaps become immediately and uncomfortably visible. The other thing that genuine self-education requires is something most people actively avoid: going to primary sources. The internet has created an entire ecosystem of summarized, simplified, pre-digested knowledge. Summaries of books, explanations of ideas, breakdowns of complex topics into 5-minute videos, and there's a place for all of that. But there's a cost that comes with consuming only the simplified version of things, which is that you get the conclusion without the reasoning. You get the what without the how or the why. And knowledge without reasoning is almost impossible to apply to new situations because you don't understand it deeply enough to know when it applies and when it doesn't. Reading the original, the actual book, the actual essay, the actual primary source is slower and harder and sometimes frustrating. It's also where the real texture of an idea lives. Reading Viktor Frankl's own words on meaning and human resilience is a very different experience from reading a summary of his ideas. A summary can explain the main points, but it often misses the personal stories, the subtle insights, and the thought process that led him there. The summary gives you the conclusion. The original work lets you experience the journey that produced it. A summary tells you what to think. The original makes you think. Self-education at its highest level is really just one thing practiced consistently: the habit of not letting yourself off the hook with surface understanding. Every time you encounter an idea that matters, you push past the point where it feels familiar and keep going until you can do something with it. Explain it, connect it, apply it, challenge it. That standard, held consistently across years of genuine curiosity, is what produces the kind of person who seems like a genius to everyone around them. They're not smarter, they just never stopped at "I've heard of that." They kept going until they actually knew it. That's the whole difference, and it's available to anyone willing to hold themselves to it. That's all for today. I hope you learned something new and found it genuinely helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.